I use what I call my 30-day rule. He said, what's the 30-day rule? He said, the 30-day rule is that when I meet a person and talk to them, no matter how much I like them, I wait 30 days before I make a decision to hire them. And if they say, well, I'm going somewhere else, if you don't hire me, you say, fine. If that is how you feel about the company, your level of loyalty, go. But if you're still interested in the job, I'd like to talk to you a couple more times. I'll explain this all to you tomorrow, through the system that we use. And he took 30 days to make a decision. And his decisions were almost always, not always, but almost always great decisions because he used slow thinking. The biggest mistakes we make as business people, we hire people quickly and turn out that we've hired a disaster. We've made a mistake. OMG, OMG. So it's really important that in decisions, in making investments, leasing buildings for 5 years, in anything that you do that has big potential consequences, slow down. And here's what Kahneman got the Nobel Prize for. Are you ready? He said the biggest mistake people make is they use fast thinking when they should be using slow thinking. They use system 1 when they should be using system 2. So for the rest of your career, when you're confronted with a decision that has what the economists call futurity, which means there's going to be a lot of consequences in the future, ask yourself, is this a case for slow thinking? If it's a case for slow thinking, slow down. Just basically take it off and put it aside. And what I learned from my big boss many years ago, whenever a big decision came up, he would always say, well, let me think about that for a few days. And no matter how much pressure he got, he would say, well, let me think about that for a few days. There's a lot of factors involved. And if it was on a Friday, he would take 2 or 3 days over the weekend to think about it before he would make a decision. And then he made brilliant decisions. One of the most brilliant men I ever worked for. Brilliant. I mean, his mind was so sharp, it was unbelievable. But even he took time to make a decision. And then he made good decisions. He made investments in things that people said, there's no money in that at all. And he invested in a petrochemical company that wanted to manufacture ethanol. And he invested in this company. The company within 5 years was a $200 million company. He invested in property that people said this property will never be anything other than farmland. Within 5 years, it was an industrial park. It had gone up in value. Because I handled the entire transaction. Gone up in value from $300 an acre to $25,000 an acre. He made more with one small transaction than most people make in a lifetime of hard work because he thought slowly. So just remember this, this require fast thinking or slow thinking. The second type of thinking is called short-term versus long-term. Now, Dr. Edward Banfield of Harvard did 50 years of research into this, and what he studied was upward social economic mobility. In other words, why is it that some people in every generation increase their income dramatically and about 80% stay flat? What's the reason for that? And so he looked in and he interviewed thousands of people at different socioeconomic levels. He found there's 7 socioeconomic levels in every society. Sometimes the size of each level will be different, but there's 7 levels. And basically it's like a diamond, like this. At the bottom level you have what is called lower class. These are people who are basically unskilled, usually on welfare, cannot provide for themselves. The bottom 5% are the social problems of every society. The second is called upper-lower class. These are people with basic skills. They wash dishes, they sweep floors, they do work that needs to be done, and they have a certain level of laboring skill. Then you have lower middle class. Lower middle class are people who have some skills. They drive trucks, they operate machines, and so on. Middle class is people with white collars. They work in business industry. Upper middle class is doctors, lawyers, architects, engineers, people with university degrees that qualify them to perform a high function. Then you have lower upper class. Lower upper class are people who are entrepreneurs, business people. They have earned a lot of money in the first generation. And most of them, as we talked about before, most of them are entrepreneurs. Most of the lower upper class, but it's first generation money. Then you have upper class. Upper class, you realize I studied all this because I'm doing this without notes. Upper class is second generation big money. So if your family makes the money, I just read this book last night on my iPad. It said that throughout the world, We say shirt sleeves to shirt sleeves in 3 generations. It's poor to poor in 3 generations. First generation makes the money, second generation inherits it, pisses it all away, and then has to start over again. So it's always 3 generations. However, the most astute families, the long-term thinkers, will invest their money and tie it up in such a way that it endures generation after generation. The Warburgs, the Carnegies, the Mellons, the Rockefellers, the great banking families are those who think long-term. And they think 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And they have fortunes today that were actually built 100, 150. The Warburg found, not the Warburg, but the banking family. Warburg is half of it. Julius Warburg joined with the, what is the big banking family of Europe?
Rothschild.
Pardon?
Rothschild.
Rothschild, thank you very much. It's the Rothschild. And the Rothschild fortune began with Aaron Rothschild, who sent his 5 sons, trained them in banking, and sent his 5 sons to the 5 capitals of Europe back in the beginning of the 19th century, in the early 1800s. And so one went to London, one went to Berlin, one went to Rome, one went to Paris, and the other one went to London, Berlin, Paris, Rome, and Madrid. Anyway, do you know how they made all their money initially? Is they set up a series of signal posts right across Northern Europe, where they were operated just in distance of light, and they used lanterns, and they had lantern signals, and they built these signal posts to certain heights so they could pass information on different commodity changes, pricing, crops, things like that, and they could pass them quite quickly. So what happened was, at the Battle of Waterloo was the major battle. But Napoleon had only lost 3 or 4 battles in his history. It was generally assumed that Napoleon would win and would become the master of the European continent, which would change all the economics. And so he had his watchers watching the post, and Napoleon lost at the Battle of Waterloo. The signals went up right across. Can you imagine? Waving lanterns and with signals. It got all the way across to the Channel, got to London, and they bought and sold everything that would be affected by the defeat of Napoleon. And the next day, or 2 or 3 days later, the news arrived by courier. They rode horses at that time, and they had either tied up or sold out of everything, and they literally became the richest family in the world because of advanced information. I'm getting off the track. But they thought long term. And what Banfield found is the one characteristic that predicts upward social mobility, higher income, better family, and everything else is long-term thinking. For example, going off and taking an MBA is long-term thinking. There's many costs, hours and hours, years and years of work and inconvenience, but by laying down your foundation at the beginning of your career, you'll automatically increase your starting salary by $50,000 working for an international company. And then from that, your salary will go up at 10 to 20% per year. Whereas if you didn't have the MBA, you'd be starting at a lower level with a lower level of increase. So long-term thinking is that when you invest and save and start a business, this is long-term thinking. What's the big mistake that people make is they use short-term thinking, immediate gratification, fun, happiness, TV, going out with friends, socializing, when they should be using long-term thinking. Now, we talked yesterday about climbing the ladder of success. Long-term thinkers study in their field 2 hours a night, 5 days a week. And they do that all throughout their career. Peter Drucker would study a new subject every 3 years. And every 3 years, he was still working on a new subject. He was studying Japanese calligraphy when he was 95 when he died. He was still working on calligraphy. Before that, he studied Renaissance art. Before that, he studied Chinese painting. Before that, he studied haiku for 3 years. He studied Japanese poetry. And then he studied medieval history, and then he studied. So every 3 years, he made himself very knowledgeable. He said, you never become a master, but you can become very knowledgeable in a subject. He never stopped studying, and he's gone down as perhaps the greatest management thinker in history. Everybody, for all the rest of history, will be compared to Drucker, and compared unfavorably. This guy is good, but he's not Drucker. this guy has some great ideas, sort of like Peter Drucker. And so the last type of thinking is what is called focused versus distracted thinking. And one of the biggest things that is killing us today is this obsession with electronic communication, this obsession with smartphones and internet. And it causes us to be distracted thinkers. Like in the US, they have laws now. You cannot speak on a cell phone or use a cell phone while you're driving. If you do, you'll be fined. You'll $500 and lose your license. Maybe go to jail. Because they're finding that almost every single accident that young people get into is caused by distraction. And they're killing people. They're killing people, they're smashing up their cars. Almost every day you read of some young person, teenager, early 20s, or what they call now screenagers. They call them screenagers. Is they are actually killing their passengers by becoming so distracted they stop looking at the road and they get themselves or their passengers killed. It's a terrible thing because they cannot focus. That's why Warren Buffett and Bill Gates said that focus is the most important quality for success. So when you start to do a business plan, you start to plan the future of your business, or design your beautiful home, or plan a lovely vacation to someplace, is go slow, think slowly, is think long term, think about what might happen, and think with focus. Take the time, stop everything, turn off. You never try to think when a television or music is playing. You notice the music that I play? It's gentle classical meditation music. Because this music actually opens up your brain, your right brain, and causes you to be more relaxed and more creative. If I play music like I played the Beatles, is when I was playing the Beatles, how many people were singing along with the Beatles? It's been a hard day. If you play music with words, then your brain starts to follow the words, or listen to the words, or try to anticipate it. And you get distracted. You cannot think clearly if you're talking to someone. You cannot think clearly if you're driving. You cannot think clearly if the television or radio or the music is on. Are you with me so far? You've got to shut them all off so you can focus. Okay, so this is what we're talking about in terms of the reason for a business plan. 80% of businesses fail in 2 to 4 years. Most new businesses are financed by the 3 F's: friends, family, and fools. And what happens is they give you the money, and what you do is because you are not focused, you're not answering these questions properly, you lose all the money. But the worst thing is not the money you lose, the worst thing is the years of your life that you lose. So 20% of businesses earn 80% of the profits. And your job is to be in the top 20% of businesses. And if you wanted to go to a particular restaurant, somebody told us a great restaurant here in Dar es Salaam. I've got the name of it. If you want to go to that restaurant, what's the first thing you would do? Ask for directions. You'd ask for directions on how to get there. Well, that's what we're doing today and tomorrow, is we're saying, I want to build a high-profit business. Well, good, these are the directions. These are what have been found in thousands of businesses. These are we're not reinventing the wheel here. We're just saying, all over the world, this is what successful businesses do. And so business plan questions is to ask these. I have this great question I used to ask, and I wrote a book around it, by the way, which is called The Road to Wealth. And anyway, the question was, it's a single question for business. What is to be sold, and to whom, and how, and by whom, and at what price, under what conditions, and how is it to be produced and distributed and charged and paid for, and how is it to be serviced and repaired? One question. What is to be sold, by, to whom, and how, and by whom, and for what reason, and so on. And so what I've done here is I've expanded it out like an accordion. So the first question is, what is the product to be sold? And you always define your product in terms of the change or improvement it will make in the customer's life. My favorite word in marketing is the word transformation. Transformation is the transformation that will take place in a person's life or work if they use your product or service. What is it? What transformation will take place? Remember we talked about, here's where they are when you meet them, here's where they will be if they buy your product. This is what they buy. So you never talk about your product or service, you talk about the transformation. Number two is, who is the ideal customer? If you get the product wrong, remember we said the number one reason, more than all other reasons put together, is that people don't want the product. So you say, what is the product to be sold? Be sure that it's a product that people want. And now how do you find out if people want it? V word. What do? You go to a prospective customer and you say, if I produce this, will you buy it? And if they say no, you say, what would I have to change on it to buy it? Today, the cutting edge of new product development is called co-creation. Is you come up with an idea and you write out a description. This is what is called the minimum viable product, is a written description of what the product will do for you. And you take it to a potential customer and you say, here's what the product will do to change or improve your life. If we offered it, would you buy it? I worked with entrepreneurs who got exclusive international rights to import a product to Johannesburg, to South Africa, or to Tanzania, and they kept it secret. I'm going to get this product in here, I'm going to load a shipload of it here, and then I'm going to sell it to everybody. And then they do, and they take it out, and they finally go out to their first potential customer and say, ta-da! Look at my new product. And the person goes, yeah, yeah, poop, puke, puke. And they end up with a warehouse full of the product. This has happened 1,000,000 times, and that's not an exaggeration. So who is the ideal customer? Who is the customer who really, really wants the change, improvement, or transformation that your product will bring about? And whoever it is, go and make sure that you're right. And make sure that the mother with the little babies will buy your product. Number 3 is, what value does he or she seek? Remember, people are always seeking value of some kind. So what is the value that they will receive that is so great that they would prefer your product over any other product or service available at the moment? Remember, people have only a certain amount of money. They cannot buy it all. Number 4 is, how is the product to be sold? And I watched all the .com, .bomb companies, and many of the internet companies today, and they don't ask this question. They think, well, if it's a good product, people just line up and buy it. No, you're going to have to sell against the smartest and most determined and most experienced competitors in the history of the world. Even if you have a product that you put in $1 and it spews out $5 bills, you're still going to have to find a way to sell it. And the way to sell it is the sales marketing process to attract interest, and the sales process to convert those interested people into customers. And we'll talk about this in great detail later. So number 5, who is going to sell the product? And again, big mistake. Oh, we'll hire some salespeople. Are you kidding? Good salespeople are like brain surgeons. And they're some of the most valuable and important people. And then, because results are everything. Results are the only thing. The only reason you're hired is to get results. Your pay is determined by your result. Your future is determined by your results. So number 1, they are clear and specific so that a child can understand what the result is. Second of all, as we said before, they are measurable. They have a number attached to them. So a child can tell you if you achieved it or not. Third of all, is they are under your control. In other words, you can't have a result for someone else. I'm going to get someone else to make more sales calls. I'm going to get my boss to pay me more money. It must be completely under your control, which means you need no permission from anybody to do this. You can just do it when you want to. Number 4, it's essential to your job. It's essential to your success. If you do this, you will be more successful. In fact, if you don't do this, you will fail in your job. And number 5 is it's time-bounded. As we said before, it has a deadline. So you can tell if it's been done or not. So when we talk about taking an action, these are the things. It can't be a vague thing like, as we said, be happier or create a happy environment. Because how can you measure that? How can you put a deadline on it? How essential is it to your success, and how much is it under your control? So these are the 5. It's clear and specific. It's measurable. There's a number you can put on it. So anybody can tell, including yourself, if you've achieved it. Like you want to lose weight, you say, I want to lose 5 pounds. I weigh 85 kilos today, or I want to weigh 80 kilos. A child can tell you how close you are to your goal. And you can tell every minute of every day how close you are. And if you say, I want to achieve this by a certain deadline, well, then you can tell if you've succeeded or failed. So an action or a result should be that simple and that clear. And it's under your control. You don't need to go and get somebody's permission. You don't need money. You don't need resources. You don't need assistance. You don't need people. You can do it yourself now. It's essential to your success. If you don't do this, you won't be successful or as successful as you can be in your career, and it's got a deadline. Just like we keep saying, clear, measurable deadline. Clear, measurable deadline over and over again. And so if at your table you're all acting as consultants of each other. So if someone says, well, this is my goal, you say, well, how would you measure that? How would you measure that so that, because I don't know anything about your business, how would I know if you achieved it? And you think, well, I would measure it this way. And be very specific. Because a good question helps you think clearly. And the greater clarity with which you think, the faster results you get. It's almost like most people in business are driving in a fog. You ever driven in fog? We have fog here in Dar es Salaam. Well, the fog it sinks down onto the road, and sometimes it's so thick, so you can cut it with a knife. Sometimes you can't see further than maybe 1 meter ahead of your headlights. And so people are driving in this fog, and they just can't see the road. They're driving very, very carefully. Most people, more than 80% of people are like that. Is they're driving in a fog, they're just not clear about where they're going. And then when you're driving, sometimes the fog will lift, and suddenly you can see 5 miles ahead. And you can put your foot on the accelerator and go wham towards your goal because of the clarity that you now have. And your job is to keep working clarity, clarity, clarity. Which brings us to the next exercise, which is one of my favorites. Oh, by the way, and here there is a survey, and I'm going to ask you to fill this out on your own. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. But it is the 7 key result areas of business success. And this is based on lots and lots of research here, page 25. So you give yourself a grade of 1 to 10 to determine how well your business is doing in each area and how well you are doing. Number 1 is productivity. How productive are you? Marketing and sales. How effective is your marketing and sales? Innovation. How effective are you at developing new products and services? Organizational development. Do you have a smooth operating business with excellent people? Cost control. You continually monitor all your expenses. Training and development. You continuously upgrade your skills and the skills of others. And profitability. I have a highly profitable business that is growing steadily in sales and net income. And so give yourself a grade of 1 to 10 in those, and you'll find that the weakest key skill sets the height of your sales and profitability. The weakest key skill determines the success of your business. If you are 9 or 10 and in 6 of those, and you're a 1 or 2 in the 7th, that is what is holding you back more than anything else. This was based on a 10-year study into corporations and executives. The weakest key skill sets the height of your business. So bringing yourself up in your weakest key skill can do more to increase your sales and profitability than anything else. So let's go on to page 27. And this is one of my favorite concepts. Remember I used to tell you that I would guarantee my clients that if they followed my advice, they would double their income and double their time off within 1 year. And then I would actually front load the program to make darn good sure they did it in 30 days. Most of my clients doubled their income and doubled their time off within the first 30 days after the first day. And this is one of the things I taught them the first morning of the first day. It was almost like cheating, because if they practice this, guaranteed to double their income. Many people have transformed their entire businesses worldwide with this simple rule. Many corporate presidents have told me that this rule just transforms their business in sales and profitability. And it's called the Law of 3. And the Law of 3, my discovery, by the way, working in time management for more than 30 years, is that there are only 3 things that you do that account for 90% of your contribution. And remember, in business, everything is contribution. The contribution you make determines the value that you give, which determines your income. So what are they? What are the 3 things you do? And what I would have my clients do is I would have them come the first day and make a list of everything they do in the course of a week or a month. Most people would come and they with a list, and they would be doing 20 or 30 things. Some were doing 40 or 50 things. And they said, these are all my priorities, and I'm just overwhelmed. I can't get everything done. So I have them ask what we call 3 magic questions. First, make a list every task. This is page 28. And then ask yourself the 3 magic questions. Question number 1, if you could only do one thing all day long, which one activity would contribute the greatest value to your business? If you could only do one thing all day long, which one activity would be the most important? Write it down. Write down your answer. Usually this answer is clear. Many people are not clear. I worked with corporate presidents who were not clear, and when they became clear, the size of their business doubled within 12 months. They could not believe it. It was just shocking to them. They had been working really, really hard on the wrong things. And so that does happen. Usually you know immediately the most important thing you can do. What's the most important thing salespeople can do?
Face-to-face meeting.
Prospecting is finding people to talk to who can buy your product. And that's what they should be doing 80% of the time. They should not be in the office. You should go through the office with a stick and beat them and get them out of the office. Go and make calls. Go face-to-face with customers. Because of all the things you can do, that is the one thing that will lead to greater results for your business than anything else, is what is called new business development, finding new customers. That's the essence of all internet marketing. We call lead generation, finding people who can buy. So what is the most important thing you can do? And you must be accurate about this. Now the second question, magic question, if you could only do 2 things all day long, what would be the second most valuable thing that you could do that would contribute the most value to your company? What are they? What is it? And write it down. Write down your answer. Now the third question is obvious, although it's not easy. Sometimes people have to wrestle with this. They're not sure, is it this or that or something else? But please understand, you must know the answer to these 3 questions. Maybe you have to talk to other people and ask, what is the most important thing I do here? What is the second most important thing I do? What is the third most important? And maybe you'll be surprised. People will say, well, the most important thing you do for this business is this. I told you the example of the gentleman who doubled the size of his business. He was in a service business providing professional services and management services to dentists. He thought his number 1 task was search engine optimization. I asked him, I said, are you an accountant? Or are you a technical person, a computer person? He said, no, not at all. I said, so then that may be important for your company, but it's not your job. And he was shocked, because I put him through an entire 49 question survey, in which this was part of it. He was shocked. He was thought that he had to upgrade his skills and he had to work on search engine optimization. No, you have to hire an expert to do that. I said, what is the one thing that contributes the greatest profits, sales and profits to your business? He said, working with large companies, the key decision makers in large companies. I said, well then, what is the most valuable thing you do? He said, I work with them personally. And so I built this business from the start, making sales, convincing them to use our services. Now I've got 30 staff and so on. So the most valuable thing I do is talk to my most important customers, because they're the ones who are most likely to buy more services and more profits. And they're also the ones who are most likely to know other companies of the same size. And he said he was just shocked. He was just shocked at that. He couldn't believe it. He said, this is going to change my entire business. The next business year, they went from $10 million in sales to $20 million in sales. And he just didn't do anything. Warren Buffett philosophy, he just said, no. The only thing I do is talk to, on the phone, or personally visit my best clients. That's all I do, 80% of the time. His business exploded. And up to that time, he thought it was something else. So you've got to know the answer to these 3 questions. So number 3, if you can only do 3 things all day long, what would be the third most important? You only do 3 things, write it down. And then, what is the most important action you could take to accomplish your most important result in each area? one action that you could take that is measurable, specific, time-bounded, and under your control that you could take to achieve your most important result in each area. Write it down. Okay, if I can have your attention. Now, I gave you the 4 ways to change. Here are the 4 keys that will guarantee your success in the future. Number 1, do fewer things. You cannot get everything done. You cannot keep increasing your to-do list. You've got to do fewer things. Here's the rule. You can only get your life under control to the degree to which you stop doing things. You use the Warren Buffett rule, and Steve Jobs said the same thing. The most important key to success is the ability to say no. I've got a book on my computer I just downloaded my iPad, and it's called The Power of No. And the ability just to say no to things that are not the highest and best use of your time is the starting point. So do fewer things. Number 2 is do more important things. Do the big 3, and only the big 3, and do them. Number 3 is do them more of the time. Spend all day long on your big 3. Only work on your big 3 until you have exhausted it. There's nothing more to do, and that's not going to happen for a while. And number 4, get better, improve your performance in each task. Take lessons, take courses, read books, do everything possible to get better and better at the 3 most important things you do. And this is guaranteed to double your productivity, performance, and output. Now, I'm not going to do the other exercises, but I will tell you this: the greatest gift you can give to your staff is sit down with each staff member and walk them through this exercise. Help them be crystal clear about the one thing they can do that makes the greatest contribution. What's the second thing? What's the third thing? And you can become a superb executive, a wonderful manager, if you just manage by objectives. Manage by most valuable contribution. And how do you do it? Once you've agreed, you just say, how's it going? How's it going on your number 1 task? And keep everybody focused. You know, employees are very much like children. They get distracted very easily. Get them focused back on the task. Adults get distracted as well. And another exercise is have everybody bring their 3 tasks to a staff meeting and discuss them with everybody else. This will really open your eyes, because you'll find that most of your staff are confused about what they're supposed to be doing and their order of priority. So you have everybody at your meeting discuss everybody else's job so that everybody leaves with crystal clarity about their job and crystal clarity about what everybody else is doing. And in times of rapid change, you need to do this continually. So turn to the people at your table and tell them the one thing that if you did it most of the time would have the greatest positive impact on your business, would make the greatest contribution. What's your number 1? Turn to the people at your table and tell them the answer. So your goal is to be the best. Join the top 10% in your industry. And ask yourself the question, what could we do more of, less of, start or stop, to be in the top 10 or 20% in our industry? According to Jim Collins, in his book, Good to Great, you don't have to be number 1. You just have to be in the top 10%. There's a famous story in the U.S. about a bank robber in the 30s, and he was robbing banks everywhere. His name was Willie Sutton. He was number 1 on the most wanted list, and finally they captured him, and they tried him and convicted him and put him in jail for 25 years. He was never seen again. And on the way out of the jail, the reporters were shouting, Mr. Sutton, why do you rob banks? And he said, are you kidding, man? That's where the money is. Why do you want to be in the top 10% in your field? That's where the money is. You know, it's a very simple thing. You can earn a little or you can earn a lot. And I would suggest that if you have a choice, which you do, every person writes their own paycheck. Every person ultimately determines their own income. And if you have a choice between a low income, if your boss went to you and said, would you like a little income or would you like a big income? Would you like to earn this amount or would you like to earn 5 or 10 times more? What would you say to your boss? Okay, well, if you want to negotiate with your boss, go to the nearest mirror and have this discussion. Because that's the person, that's your boss. The person in the mirror is the one who decides how much you earn by the things that you do and by the things that you fail to do. When you continually upgrade your skills and learn and become better and better, you eventually move up. Like an escalator, you eventually move up to a higher income level. If you stop learning new skills, you stop, and eventually the escalator starts to go back down because your existing skills become obsolete. According to Stephen Covey, your existing skill base has a shelf life of about 3 years. That means 50% of your skills will be obsolete in 3 years. And you'll have to be replaced by new skills at a higher level just because of changes in knowledge, information, technology, products, services, competition. If you're not running, there's a little story from Alice in Wonderland. And Alice is sitting there, she's looking at the big rabbit